Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we are discussing a fascinating evolution of the Zenith Chronomaster Sport. This is the Zenith Chronomaster Sport Rodgers limited edition in steel with green accents. It is a 2023 limited edition of 250 pieces that was created in collaboration with Zenith brand spokesman Rodgers, who is also quarterback for the New York Jets. Now, year one didn't end well because of an injury, but you can see the clear New York Jets inspiration in the design of this all-green watch, which feels like it came out at the right time because green watches are very hot right now. The timepiece is 41 millimeters in diameter in steel. In terms of thickness, you can see neither thick nor thin at 13.9 millimeters thick. Two different ways to measure it lug to lug. If we just measure the case, then it's 46.8 millimeters. But if we measure the end link, then the total distance across the wrist is about 51 millimeters. There's a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. A couple things I like here. First, the addition of the numerals and the green accents, including the green lacquer dial. It really does differentiate this watch from the Rolex Daytona. And early on in the production of the Chronomaster Sport, especially the first year, 2021, particularly with the color combos they chose, they did heavily reference the industry standard Rolex Cosmograph. This really feels like its own watch, more independent in terms of its design direction. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see it wears fairly easily, comfortable, and with a little bit of a lug curvature, it actually does wrap a bit around the wrist. You can see that well from this angle. I think you could wear this watch well on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference, no problem. The lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. You can see in profile with a sloped bezel, it should fit underneath most cuffs, even shirt sleeves, but definitely all jackets. The bracelet is probably the part that still seems most reminiscent of Rolex. Now, we've got an integrating end link, but then we have an oyster-like three-link design with large center links, a little bit of a taper as we move down from the end link, polished centers, satin flanks, and then there's a bevel on the edge. The bevel's actually a nice touch, and it rolls around to a polished flank with removable links on both sides fixed by screws, but then we've also got these 5 pairs of divots drilled inside the clasp, so using your strap tool, you can dismount the spring bar and change the anchoring point of the bracelet in the clasp to fine-tune the fit. We have a single fold stainless steel deployant clasp. You close it all up, snaps securely, and then we have a clamshell lock. You can see there's a little curve to dig your nail in to make it easier to open up the clasp. And we've got a combination of polish and satin, including a straight through polish with the Zenith Star logo. You'll also find the star on the crown. And then a case profile, which is probably the most distinctively Zenith part of the design. As you can see, this is the long-running Chronomaster case. It's very distinct from anything Rolex makes, with a little bit of a squared-off lug profile. There's a bevel that runs end-to-end and flares over the lug hoods. There is a little bit more curvature and compound curvature from top to bottom and then end-to-end than you'll find on a Daytona. It's all polished over here, and then we've got lug tops that are satinated. We've got vintage-inspired pump pushers, another way this watch sets it apart from Rolex, which uses screw-down crowns, and the bezel might at first glance appear to be some sort of a tachymeter or telemeter. It's none of the above. It is actually a 1/10 of a second scale made of green ceramic, highly scratch resistant. Remember, green ceramic, second only to the sapphire crystal in hardness on the watch. It's been lacquer filled, so we have a combination of white and green, just like the New York Jets uniforms. This system allows you to more easily read tenths of seconds. So, for example, the El Primero, over the years, has always had a beat rate, with the exception of some Rolex applications, always had a beat rate of 10 beats per second. But actually distinguishing between those tenths on a conventional chronograph scale can be very difficult. So what Zenith did was they created a foudroyante, or a lightning seconds hand, that covers the entire 360 degrees of the dial every 10 seconds. And so it spreads 1 second over a large distance. Relatively speaking, you could see that the angular travel is quite substantial. This is 2 seconds right here, and then I can see 1, 2. So this is 2 2/10. The individual hash marks giving me the ability to easily read tenths of a second and then use this high beat movement to its potential. Remember, most chronographs are not 5 hertz like this one, but 4 hertz, 3 hertz, or even 2.5 hertz. A little shock of orange here for the chronograph registers. You can see not only do we have the foudroyante, we have a conventional 60 seconds register here, and then a minute register, which goes up to 60, which is a nice feature because most chrono-minute registers only go to 30, and then they start over. You will note, however, that you lose the hour register with this fascinating chronograph mechanism, so you're going to be timing events of an hour or less. Taking a quick look at the dial, it is a lush and lovely gloss green lacquer, which really works quite well with the gloss green of the bezel. There's a very steep metallic brushed chaptering against which you can read those fractions out. Board acts as a sort of slope down from the bezel to the dial base. When you look, you can see there is distinct boxing and cambering of the sapphire, so not a cheap flat piece here. They clearly thought about that component, often overlooked. You'll also appreciate that the watch uses the same font throughout. So for example, you could see that this one and this one and this one are all the same one. The same goes for 2s, same goes for 4s, and so that consistency of numeral font across the design, not universal. A lot of brands make mistakes and they actually miss out on that, lose out on that. Well, we do have overlapping registers in the classic El Primero tradition. None of the registers are cropped so much that you can't read them precisely. And we have grayscale shading. We have silver, white, gray, and then anthracite. You can also see that the registers are somewhat countersunk at their center with concentric patterns internally. We have applique radially arrayed metal numerals, white infill. We'll do a loom shot here so you can see the watch. Quite easy to read in the dark. And then a feature not traditionally included on El Primeros. Remember, this is the caliber 3600. This is a new generation El Primero. We've got hacking seconds. We've also got a quick set date, and it is a very quick set date, so you can rapidly set and cycle. Great looking watch, again, much more a Zenith than a Rolex. I don't think there will ever be a Rolex riposte to this Aaron Rodgers edition. Now on the back, we have some explaining to do. So this is Aaron Rodgers' traditional number 12. That is what he wore prior to arriving at the Jets. And of course, the New York Jets, 12 is Joe Namath. So Broadway Joe actually gave his blessing for Rodgers to use the number, but out of respect, Rodgers elected to use 8. So we've got his pre-Jets number on the back, and then a very clearly Jets-inspired watch everywhere else. Taking a look at the movement, you can see caliber 3600. If you ever want to know what movement is in your Zenith, you can always see it's part of the reference number, and it has been for decades. 1 of 250. You'll also note it is a 100-meter water-resistant watch, so you can absolutely swim with it. A gray scale across most of the movement, with the exception of some blued screws and the blued column wheel. You can see this is a lateral clutch column wheel chrono. The column wheel making for a nice crisp actuation. It really feels good. You can see underneath my finger here the lateral clutch, which is chosen for both traditional purposes and because it is aesthetically pleasing. Automatic winding, I believe 60 hours of power reserve with a stop seconds and a quick set date, column wheel, lateral clutch, 35 pivot jewels, and even though you can't see it, there is a full silicon anti-magnetic unlubricated escapement for higher efficiency. Now we have here both blued and polished screws. You'll note the presence of both. All steel chronograph components have been brushed across their surface. The same treatment has been applied, for example, to the bridge for the balance, and we've got both Edicron for fine adjustment and beat error correction, plus an eccentric screw extended index micrometric regulator, so this watch can be adjusted very, very precisely indeed. There's snailing across the bridges, there's satination on the wheels as well as the barrel cap, snailing on the edges of the bridges, and then solarization at the center of the ball bearing. You can also see that Zenith thought of everything, giving you this little kerf under the crown so you can more easily dig your nail in and withdraw the crown. And again, a 60-hour power reserve, a very, very cool watch that is packed with cool mechanical engineering and an aesthetic that feels very distinct from anything Rolex has ever made. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.